So good morning to you all. I would like to thank Dan and his wonderful team for helping us set up this meeting. They are really a wonderful team. I'm happy they are on our side. From what I heard, Dan green-lighted this meeting from a bunker in Tel Aviv under the ballistic missiles. So that's really something. And I want to thank the Uruguayan ambassador, my former classmate. Here in the Uruguayan ambassador, you might understand why my mother was so proud to be a Uruguayan. I was born in Uruguay, so I am a Uruguayan. I never thought of having any other nationality, but my mother was a Uruguayan by choice, and she was very proud to be one. Actually, Uruguayan and Jews have more links than what appear in the surface. We are the only two people in the history of mankind to have an exodus. So we have Artigas, which is our Moses, and our people at the time, they didn't cross a river, but it was an exodus anyway. And so thank you all for coming today, and thank you to all the persons and institutions who have helped us, such as the Israel Allies Foundation. Let me tell you, first of all, that it doesn't seem to, but Ruperto is a dangerous person. When he called me and said, the book is out in English, we have to go in April to the US, I said, no way. No way, because the academic year is starting, and in our university, the sentence for leaving during the start of the academic year is the death sentence. So nobody can leave. But here I am. And after I accepted to come under pressure, he said, and your wife has to come as well. So she's here as well. So he's a dangerous person, and this is part of the history of the book. Because my mother, for several decades, never spoke about what happened. I don't know why. I read about this. I have the titles during the 96 and 90, during the 70s. Yes, it was during the War of the 7 Days. I found her, I was a little kid, and I found her very, she was intensely moved by what was happening, and she started telling me that it looks like this is going to happen again. I didn't understand at the time what she meant, but she was sort of looking at an Holocaust again. It was 67. For decades, she didn't speak. There were only these flashes, like in 67. I read about it when I was a bit older, and I read about survivor's guilt. Some people felt guilt because others have died and they have survived. Maybe this is an explanation. There was also this hierarchy of pain. She said, I don't deserve any attention because the people who were killed and the people who were in the camps are the ones who deserve the real attention. We were never in the camps. We survived. We had a tough time. I don't know. Maybe those were explanations as well. At some point, Ruperto came into our lives, and he started talking to her. He wanted to write the book, and he called me and said, your mother is against. She doesn't want to cooperate. What can you do? And I said, Ruperto, if you have met my mother, you know I cannot do anything. She's over her own mind. But somehow he achieved her approval. He obtained her approval, and for 2 years, they sat in her living room talking. My father, who is still with us, fortunately, is now 95, so this is the reason he's not coming. He hasn't come. But his mission during these briefing sessions was bringing the chocolate cake.
Very important. Very important.
Absolutely. So, because I think you needed this stamina to help going through all this hell that he was listening to. So, after the book came out, the family, my kids, our three children started to ask, why didn't she speak to us? Why didn't she speak to us? Why to Ruperto? Ruperto is not a member of the family. Well, he's not a professional historian. I don't know. He's not an interrogator from the police. So why to him? And it was a conundrum. So we didn't know what to answer, and we didn't really know what to do. So we were stuck there, and we decided that the only way forward was to designate him as a member of the family. So he's now my brother.
Thank you very much.
So now my mother spoke to one of her honorary sons. So there is no cognitive dissonance now. So after the book came out, many people, and the book was a bestseller unexpectedly. My mother was very suspicious. She wasn't very optimistic. She said, nobody will want to read this. And, when you read about the story of Elie Wiesel or Primo Levi, you say, well, you don't know if your story is going to resonate, but it did. It was a bestseller in Spanish. It was sold all over Latin America, in Spain. It was translated into Italian, and finally to Hebrew. She was still with us when it came into Hebrew. It meant a lot to her. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic, so we couldn't make it to Israel, but still, it's in Hebrew now. Now it's in English. So people kept asking me, was it good for her? Which is absolutely a general question for survivors. Was it therapeutic? Was it good for her to have all this coming out at almost 80 years old? Or actually was it bad because all these memories came back flowing again? Because she didn't want to remember very much, and she didn't want to speak at all about this, because she used to say, you cannot look forward and backward at the same time. It's like driving. You cannot look backward and forward at the same time. That was her way. You cannot hate all the time. You cannot forgive, but you cannot hate all the time either. So if you want to build a life and don't give a victory to the ones who destroyed our youth, then you have to look forward. And forward she looked. She established the new present ORT in Uruguay in 1975. And at a certain point she said, this country needs a technological university, a private university. At the time, it was, everybody said this is impossible, absolutely impossible. In Uruguay, there was only one university. Private endeavors are seen with some suspicion in Uruguay, and it's an understatement. And private universities is even worse. And a Jewish private university, I wouldn't say in any moment it was a problem to be a Jewish university, but it was connected to a religious identity. So people didn't like any. Uruguay is a very secular country. I'm happy that it is that way. But everybody said it is against. You shouldn't go for it, even in the Jewish community. So we had all these leaders coming, and they liked ORT at the time, but it was a small technical school, and they were telling my mother, don't go for it, it won't be possible. And there were some rough encounters at the time. And I remember I was there as a young man, and there was this person who was quite aggressive in saying, don't go for it, you don't have to do it. And she said, look, the Gestapo couldn't stop me, so leave the room. So just to wrap up, let me share with you, after the book came out, we had these long chats with my mother about this topic, about her life experience. And she had 3 takeaways from her experience after opening up, after the book came out, after we had 10,000 messages, because I used to filter the messages in the social sphere, because I was afraid that there were coming all these denials and everything. Never happened. Mostly positive messages. It's a history of, it's a story of resilience and going forward in life. So many people connected this in the messages I read before giving them to her. People coming out of diseases, people who were in prison in Uruguay during military time, all this sort of, people were connecting this book to any other kind of experience that had nothing to do with Judaism or the Holocaust, or the Shoah, whatever. So takeaways, we had all these long chats. One small piece is that they were saved along the way by a Catholic priest. And so she always said, there is good everywhere. They were trying to go into Switzerland. They were betrayed by the passeurs, the ones who, they sell you these supposedly tickets. And they were betrayed. They were left in what it was called at the time the red zone, which is the zone between France and Switzerland. And they were left stranded in a field very close to a town. And the priest of the town hid them in the church for a few days until they found a truck to go back to Lyon. And actually, I helped her find the priest. We couldn't find it because she couldn't remember what was exactly the church. Years later, she told this story to the Archbishop of Montevideo, and she spoke at many churches, at several churches after. So the takeaways. Well, these long chats, several takeaways. They can be politically maybe not perfectly perfect. I don't know, for some of you. She was not completely satisfied with never again. Our Jewish slogan, the never again. She was not completely satisfied. She said never again is a wish. She didn't say we should think it, but she said it's a wish. We should say never again defenseless. That's a call for action. That's the first takeaway. We talked a lot about this. Was the Shoah a deficit of human rights, or was it a deficit of strength? I think she leaned towards it was a deficit of strength. You have to be self-reliant in many ways and have allies as well, and be right and be moral as well. So first takeaway, never again defenseless. The second takeaway, again, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but I was asked to share the takeaways, is don't sell your soul, because she saw with her own eyes in Belgium how many Jews were happy or were prepared to transform, so to speak, their Judaism into politically acceptable ways, thinking this was going to save them. They didn't. So you could be, and we talked a lot about this, from the left of the left spectrum up to the right, ultra-right spectrum. You could be very religious, non-religious. You could be connected to the Jewish community, non-connected to the Jewish community. You could be a Zionist. You could be an anti-Zionist. You could be a Bund supporter. You could be a communist. You could be anything. As long as you were Jewish, you were going to be summoned to the labor camp. You were going to lose your house. You were going to risk your life, and later on, deported. So don't sell your soul. It won't save you. And the third takeaway was that memory is not all. For memory to be really useful, there has to be learning. You have to learn from what happened, not only to remember. Remembering what happened is important as long as it is a precursor to learning. And I think we can connect this to what is happening at the moment. I don't think any time in life there were so many Holocaust museums, Holocaust memorials, Holocaust books, Holocaust courses in universities and schools. And still, it doesn't seem that we have, and people have learned enough about it. Actually, my mother used to say, she was still there in October 7, 2023, she was still with us, and her first words were the world hasn't learned anything. So thank you very much, Dan, again. Thank you.